Welcome, everyone, to Buddha's Center. My name is Jeff Allen, and today, once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapas' great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. We just pretty much finished up the section on relying on the spiritual friend, relying on the teacher. And now we get into a general idea of how we would meditate on these topics. When we look at the Lam Rim Chemo, there's a kind of like secret section in there that I think a lot of people don't pay attention to as much. And it's where Lama Tsongkhapa shows us how to actually saturate our minds with each of these topics and how we should be practicing as beginners, starting with this topic of relying on the friend that has all the preliminaries that we talked about, the greatness of the teaching's author, the greatness of the teaching, and then how to listen to and explain the teaching. So it's assuming we've gone over that and saturated our minds with the way to listen to teachings and so forth. And then it shows us how we actually meditate on these topics. So wonderful, wonderful section. And it goes over the 6 preparations, and within that we have the 7 limb prayers. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on this chapter that I think is so overlooked at times. And I think there's another beautiful section that's overlooked at times, and that's at the very end of the Lam Rim Chemo, where we have a summary of everything that Lama Tsongkhapa stated, and he shows how to practice these and the order in which they're to be practiced, and then gets slightly into the Tantrayana. So wonderful. So that's what we'll be looking at today. But before we get started, let's set some proper motivation. Let's get into a body posture that's intentional, a body posture that allows for clarity of our mind, that allows us to know we're doing something specifically to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So that is the 7-point Vairochana posture that we've gone over many times, sometimes called 8 if we include the breath, and we will include the breath. So we can call it the 8 points if we wish. So the 7 points are keeping our legs in a cross-legged posture, ideally in the lotus position. If it's something we can physically make happen, we should practice it over and over again. If our body physically could get into that position, we should try to make it. Through exercising it and through stretching, we can do that. But if it's not something because of our knee conditions, our back conditions, et cetera, that's reasonable or something that we can do, then it's said that we can modify that posture, put it into a half lotus or just cross-legged or putting our legs on the floor. So it's very important that we remember this whenever we get into this posture, that we are aiming at perfect position. So whatever we are capable of doing within aiming at perfect position, we should do. So we get our legs into the whatever fashion we can, ideally in the full lotus posture. Then we get our back straight like a stack of coins, hands in our lap, right on our left, with our thumbs pointed upward in a diamond position almost. So our hands right on our left in our lap. Arms kind of bowed out. So we have our legs, our hands, and our back in a very straight position. Then we get our shoulders comfortable. We don't want to be slouched or, too far back, because if we push them too far back, it ends up arching our back. If they're too far forward, we end up not having our spine completely straight. So it's very important to keep that position. So we have those 4 points. Then we put the head slightly forward, making for a 5th. The eyes slightly open, pointed at the kind of end of your nose, pointed at a 45-degree angle downward. But we're not trying to focus our meditation on the tip of our nose. Our mind is what's going to be meditating. We're trying to cut off the kind of physical senses, our eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousnesses. These types of consciousnesses are what we're trying to kind of shut down, and we're focusing on our mental consciousness. This is what we're meditating with. So we try to get to a focused point with our eyes that we can eventually, once we're very skilled in meditation and concentration, eventually make that actual environment around us completely disappear, where we're just meditating on the object of observation of our mind. So this is the reason why we slightly open our eyes, and it has the effect of helping us to ward off excitement, because if our eyes are too open, we have too much mental engagement. And if our eyes are too closed, this could make dullness or lethargy happen. So we ward off these 2 obstacles of meditation. laxity or lethargy and excitement by using this technique with our eyes. So then we put our mouths for the seventh point into a comfortable position with our tongue on the roof, slightly touching the back of the teeth to allow for circulation. And we're breathing through our nose. And this mouth posture not only allows for circulation, that combined with breathing through the nose allows us not to dry out as well. So it allows us not to have too much saliva build up, but it also allows us not to dry out. It allows for a proper circulation. So we're engaging in this for the long run. We want to eventually be able to sit for hours at a time. And this posture, once we're able to get into it, and it's promised by all of the yogis that once we can actually do this Vajra posture, it aligns our body in such a way that allows for us to sit for extremely long periods of time without discomfort, without our legs going to sleep, without, cramps and pains and so forth. And it allows us, because of this perfect alignment of our body in such a secure fashion, it allows us to hold that posture and sit there, and not only sit there, but there's some connection to this alignment and the clarity of our mind, because our mind is going through all these various channels, right, on the wind. So it allows, if we can kind of get the wind in a very flowing, even fashion by aligning all of these various channels and so forth, we can kind of get the mind also more realistic, stabilized, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a clarity that takes place when we get into this proper positioning because of this connection with our internal winds and so forth, and the connection to the mind. So the very, very subtle winds that carry that mind. We're working with our body to try to befriend those and make them help us in our achievements. So we get into that position of the 7 points, and then we make the breath the 8th point. So we begin by breathing in and out and focusing on the breath. But let's also, while we're breathing in and out, focusing on the breath, let's see if we can bring an image of Buddha Shakyamuni, or at whatever deity you familiarize yourself with the most. If you have a specific object of observation for your calm abiding, I'm not asking you to change it. If you have something you've worked with quite a bit, use that. But right now, just focus on the breathing in and out so that we can get our minds down neutrally. But see if you can also simultaneously think of the image of a Buddha in front of you, a couple feet in front of you. Think of it in your mind. We're not trying to hallucinate it with our eye consciousness. We're trying to have our mind bring up this image, and we're having our mind focus on the breath. So it's multiple things going on. So if we were trying to gain single pointed concentration, we would keep it very, very, very still. So hopefully the breathing gets to the point where it's calmed down enough, and then the image just becomes clearer and clearer and clearer, and the mind focuses singly on the image. So we'll just practice that a little bit. There's various techniques. We're going to try out a few different techniques over the course of these teachings, and you see whichever one sticks, whichever one really makes your mind work better, and then apply that accordingly. So let's breathe in and out for a few rounds and try to focus on the image of Buddha Shakyamuni, not in a full body form, as small as you can get that image in front of you. So let's breathe in and out. Let's begin to do some analysis of suffering. Think about general sufferings and specific sufferings. Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. What are those sufferings that Buddha pointed out? We think about the suffering of birth, suffering of aging, the suffering of sickness, the suffering of death. We think about how all of those relate to our lives and how we've experienced those sufferings. And if we can't remember the suffering of birth, we've seen when babies are born and they cry in such terror and cling to anything. Think about the suffering of being separated from pleasant things and relate those to our lives. Think about having to be separated from pleasant things, meeting with unpleasant things. Think about all the things that you've wanted and not gotten and the suffering that created. Since beginningless time, we've had to experience these sufferings. And at the time of death, if we haven't gotten rid of our afflictive obstructions and our obstructions to omniscience, and we still have attachment, then we will have to be thrown into another set of aggregates and experience these sufferings again. The suffering of suffering, headaches, illness, meeting with unpleasant things, separating from our loved ones. Think of the suffering of change, all those things that we chase after, we think are happiness, that are loaded with a self-destruct mechanism of happiness within it. They will turn into a form of suffering because they are a contaminated happiness within cyclic existence. They aren't the kind of happiness that a foe destroyer has. We see all the forms of happiness that we chase after as bait that keeps us in cyclic existence. And then the third type of suffering that Rinpoche has told us many, many times pervades cyclic existence is the pervasive compounded suffering. And that is through the force of karma and afflictions, we're thrown into rebirth again and again and again, and have to experience all the things just mentioned. We will have to experience the suffering of the hell realm. Imagine what that would be like if we were a hungry ghost. Imagine what that would be like if we were an animal. Imagine what that would be like. If we told an animal, all you have to do is recite one Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, and you could become enlightened. The animal couldn't even do that, let alone analyze method and wisdom. The only reason that we don't have fur all over our body and horns on our head is that we haven't been born into that position next. We haven't died, and our karma hasn't thrown us into that predicament. But when we die, the things we've done, those positive and negative, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow, as Lama Tsongkhapas says. And those things will create our experiences. Those negative things we've done will create negative experiences, and those positive things we've done will create positive experiences. We'll be thrust again and again and again into a set of aggregates that we won't have control over. Since beginningless time, we've created those causes. And when the conditions are ripe, these causes will come to fruition and produce results in among the 6 realms of cyclic existence. The Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of origin. The Buddha stated that the origin of all of this suffering that was pronounced in the first turning of the wheel was ignorance, an ignorance that grasped at things as being truly established, that created improper mental activity, that created afflictions, that created contaminated karma, that creates samsara and suffering. The Buddha is very clear about this. And that the thing that blocked us from complete infinite happiness was our self-centered attitude, coupled with the grasping at true establishment, grasping at the I. And then the Buddhists gave us the good news that we could have infinite happiness and freedom from suffering if we relied upon a path that superior beings saw, and specifically a path which was for others. The Buddha said if we wanted infinite happiness and freedom from suffering, both of those things, we had to think about other beings too. We could have freedom from fear. We could get rid of cyclic existence altogether without that combo, but we couldn't have infinite happiness. We couldn't have the most happiness possible if we didn't think about others. So then we start to think about others. We start to think about others in the states of suffering that we've thought about ourselves being in. We think about our loved ones and how much it hurts them, just like it hurts us, how much that pain hurts them, those sufferings. We think about those strangers that we see and that they want happiness and that they have all of this pain and suffering that we've thought about ourselves. And then we think about the beings that we label as enemies and recognize that that's not a stable thing. Enemy isn't solid, and enemy doesn't exist in that way. We're merely seeing them as that because of some reaction, because of some misdiscrimination that's happened within our mind that doesn't allow us to see their previous kindness. Since beginningless time, we've been born again and again and again, and we've had every relationship with every being imaginable. Those beings that we see as our enemies were as kind to us as the kindest person we can ever imagine, the kindest being we could ever imagine. Each and every being has had that relationship with us, but we've forgotten it because we have this memory shut-off mechanism that happens from life to life because our minds aren't big enough to see what was right before us, and our minds aren't big enough to see what's in front of us. We're so stuck in this moment of ourselves that that's all we can focus on. Grasping at the I and then cherishing it more than anyone else in the world, knowing we're the most important person in the world in our minds. So we think about these beings and how nice it would be if they had happiness, and think, may they have happiness, and think we'll be a cause for that happiness. And we think about all those 3 types of beings and we say how nice it would be if they were free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. I'll be part of that cause. And when we think about whether or not we have the capability or the capacity to really help these beings, we will see that we fall short if we're honest with ourselves. Because when we get to this step where we say, I'll take on the task of freeing all these sentient beings from suffering, the causes of suffering, and I'll bring them to a state of happiness, infinite happiness, we'll see that we don't have the capacity to do that. We wouldn't know where to begin with each individual sentient being and what to say to each individual sentient being. We wouldn't know how to communicate with a worm. We wouldn't know how to communicate with a being frozen in the cold hell. And we know that the only way that we can have freedom from suffering and have infinite happiness is to become a Buddha. And we know that then if we want to help all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, we have to become a reliable being who can help with that, a being who's omniscient and who has love and compassion and power to help all sentient beings. And the Buddha told us we could become that. The Buddha said he was just exactly like we are right now, engaged in specific pathways and practices, and was able to become the great omniscient being that was full of love and compassion and had the power to help. So we then recognize that we must become Buddhas for the sake of sentient beings. If we want to help all sentient beings, we have to become Buddhas. If we want to fulfill all of our needs, we have to become a Buddha. We recognize that we have a partial fulfillment of our own needs if we don't practice bodhicitta. If we only achieve a Hinayana nirvana, we haven't even fulfilled our own needs. If we're abiding in nirvana, we still have imprints of the afflictions that disallow our omniscience, that don't allow us to know everything. So we must become Buddhas for ourselves and for others. If we want to be complete, if we want to be perfect, we have to become a Buddha. So how do we become Buddhas? How does this happen? This huge, huge goal, how does this happen? Step by step, it happens. It happens by following all of the practice of the stages of the path to enlightenment, one by one, realizing them one by one, and then eventually having a union of method and wisdom, eventually achieving the final bodhisattva ground and walking off that ground and crossing from sentient to non-sentient into Buddhahood, sentient being to non-sentient being into Buddhahood. Technically speaking, you'll still possess a mind, but you're no longer in that category. You're now the greatest being in the world. So we will all become the greatest beings in the world. Each and every sentient being will become the greatest being in the world by practicing the stages of the path to enlightenment. So why are we here today? Because this is a Mahayana teaching, we're here to become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. So as we recite these prayers, as we recite the Heart Sutra, and we recite the 5 paths that are implicitly contained within the Heart Sutra, and the emptiness that is explicitly pronounced at the Heart Sutra, may we analyze the meaning. May we hear those words and be doing so in order to become perfect, in order to become the most reliable guide for sentient beings, in order to not have these petty little biases that cause us to separate beings into categories and then act accordingly. More likely to help our friends, less likely to help a stranger, and very unlikely to help those we consider foes. But they were very, very willing to help us in our most vulnerable states. So we need to fix that broken mind that we have. So we do these prayers. We make a mandala offering. We go for refuge, and it's a Mahayana refuge. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We reinforce this in our mind over and over and over again. We practice it. We act as if until we are. The idea of faking it until you make it. You have to have faith to some degree that all of these things will come together and these pieces will have a beautiful picture in front of you, that this puzzle was just a pile of pieces. And then you put all these pieces together and you have this beautiful picture in front of you. And you had to have faith that that was going to work. You had the outside of the box and you saw a picture and it said that all these pieces in the box are going to turn into that picture. So you started working, putting things together that look like they should go together. Very, very similar what we're doing here. So may all those pieces of the puzzle that we're putting together through listening to the teachings, through analyzing the teachings, and through meditating on the teachings cause us to become Buddhas as quickly as possible. So it's for that reason that we're here today. So we'll start with the Heart Sutra with that intention, that we're reciting the Heart Sutra so that we become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and that there's no other purpose in the world for us to be here. Whatever reason we came to the Dharma teachings had something to do with relieving suffering for ourselves. And when we got to the Dharma, we realized that the only way to be truly, truly happy was to cherish others the way that we cherish ourselves now. So may we learn how to cherish others more than we do now. And may we learn through these prayers and practices how to stop grasping at the I as being truly established, stop seeing the duality of everything, and be able to see non-duality and the emptiness of inherent existence of all phenomena. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable true complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Ngala nyube ne jodamba ne ngoshe de junga yi du do jendru babo lama yi bu shinzi ne zongandro zola shatse lo gazamara dajana razamara ve gazamara dajana. Agazamara dajana razamara me de ada onga de kade baragade barazanga de badizo baba gonje sanji gai de me doji je laba doji meba doji shewa doji. Yagi baje me dumbi shudanji shedin goye zoha. Girin dunja je je shewa dan me do nebe jen dan de wa dan dun bo dunji bo zo zo joji. Dashi di jan den da de le jo. Now we'll make a mandala offering and imagine that we're making this from the teacher all the way back to all of the gurus in the lineage and all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. We're offering a perfect world to those perfect beings. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. Na na ye la yo shu ye zo la ma da ma ni no ni je ga la yin ze yun zen di da zang bei do je zin ma la za je ju ni ja ba pa du zo. I send forth this jewel mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Gam Niradayami. Okay, so now before we do the refuge prayer, let's do a small visualization. Let's imagine that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Kensur Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, all of these beings are in the field in front of us, the merit field. We just imagine them in the space in front of us. Imagine them that they're so pleased with us that we're doing something good. You know, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas see us doing things that won't cause our Buddhahood very often. So imagine that they're, you know, Kensur Geshe Wandak, who we can relate to so dearly, is there just smiling and so happy that we're continuing to do those practices and that we're continuing to do the things that will make us Buddhas, because the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas only want us to do the things that make us Buddhas and make us Bodhisattvas, because they know that that's the only thing that will cause us to have lasting joy and lasting happiness. So imagine that all these holy beings in the space are so happy with what we're doing. And imagine that we are leading all sentient beings around us in this prayer. Imagine that our friends, our neutrals, our enemies, in the way that we've explained how we equally want to benefit those beings, are all around us. And we imagine that we want to become a Buddha for all of those beings. So we imagine that we're leading all sentient beings in this refuge prayer, that all sentient beings are going for refuge, and that they all the beings in the hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigod, God, they're all able to do this prayer. And whatever, they take a moment from their unique bliss or their unique suffering that they have, just to be able to, in their own language, all around us, make this prayer that we're leading them in. And we just imagine that all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are all just in the space. And we just imagine that they're so pleased with us going for refuge. And we imagine that there's just a massive amounts of Dharma texts and so forth all around in the space. And we imagine that the Sangha, all the Arya beings of the hearers, solitary realizers, and Bodhisattva vehicle are all in that space too. So when we make this, do this refuge prayer, let's imagine we're leading all sentient beings, and that all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and all the hearers and solitary realizer Aryas are in the space in front of us, and all of the applicable texts, so we can see the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And when we do the Guru Puja refuge, we say, I take refuge in the Lama, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So we have that complete refuge in the space in front of us. And let's do then the refuge prayer with this visualization, imagining that all sentient beings are able to do this refuge prayer with us and are starting to mature alongside us and we're starting to aid them, even though we aren't Buddhas yet. We're doing the best we can to aid them so that we can become perfect, so that we can truly aid them, so they can become perfect, so they can truly aid us. And that's how we know that everyone is just as important as everyone else, because the enemy that we see right now may become a Buddha before us and may have more love for us than any being ever has. So let's help all sentient beings and let's help ourselves in the meantime. I take refuge until real quickly. We'll say this refuge prayer in English and then sometimes in Tibetan. Today we'll say it in English, but I have to say through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma. So I know I'm leading this, but whenever you're teaching the Dharma, so we say through the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. That's for students to say. So the teacher says the merit I create by teaching the Dharma. And normally the refuge prayer says, through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections. So it's kind of catering it, tailoring it to the specific activity. The students are listening, the teacher is teaching, and when those activities aren't going on, through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of sentient beings. So we're always going for refuge, and we're doing things in order to become Buddhas. So we're kind of sealing the refuge with our activity at the same time, if you will. If that makes any sense, something like that. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. The one who is transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector, to you I make prostrations. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and profound, who eternally shines forth the forever noble light rays, to you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind of full awakening for the benefit of sentient beings. May this teaching be heard and understood in the language of all sentient beings. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for being here. The foundation of all good qualities is the teacher, and it's why it's right at the beginning of the Lam Rim, how to lead students through the actual instructions, how to lead them. How would a student be led? A student would be led by someone. And in order to learn things perfectly, we have to be taught them perfectly. So we have to try to find the most advanced teacher that we can, who has the qualities that are outlined in this text. So we went over it in a very complete way in terms of the Lam Rim Chemo in the very introductory section of relying on a teacher. And then my advice was to go into more of the benefits of relying, how you rely on speech and how you rely on action. I feel that the section's very, very clear in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. There aren't a lot of nuances in there. So I felt like everyone should just, if you're interested in learning more about this, look into all of the points of the outline and learn them very clearly, because this section, gets into a lot of attitudes that you would have about a teacher once you've examined them pretty thoroughly, and once you know that you're their student and you're, built up a very, very strong kind of connection with that teacher. So I'll let everybody, take a look at that section. Where it gets into, how we rely on thought and how we rely on practice and how we develop this root of faith. So we went over the definition of the teacher. We went over the definition of the student. and the benefits and so forth. So how the student relies on the teacher, the benefits and the faults of not relying, and then the summary of those 5 previous parts. Everyone feel free to look through the Lam Rim Chemo very clearly and make sure that we use our common sense when looking for a qualified teacher. If we were looking to fill a job position that was very menial, we'd have very specific qualifications that the person would have to have in order for us to hire them for that job. And if we're going to hire a being for the job of being in charge of our spiritual monopoly, and we're going to let them into that world that will affect us forever, then that job description is a pretty big one. So we need to make sure that we take it seriously, and then we don't let just anyone into our minds in terms of relying on them and believing what they say and then doing what they say. We have to make sure they know what they're saying, and we have to make sure that we have they have our best. Their intentions are for our benefit. They aren't for something else or something strange. So what I wanted to do today is get into the section, which is the actual meditation session. And there's a very, very beautiful practice called the 6 preparations. And I remember Geshe Lobsang Gompo teaching us this practice when he came to the US. And it was, didn't ring as important at the time. It just kind of was information, and, I was doing some of the stuff already. And the rest of it just kind of seemed like information. But now I see it as just such a beautiful way to begin each session. And it gives a student some kind of specific practice to do that's concrete before you get into any analysis or single pointed concentration. So I'd like to share that with you today. So when we're about to get into meditation practice, or we're going to do some kind of meditation, something formal, it says, how do we familiarize ourselves with each of these topics? What are we going to do with each of these topics in the Lam Rim? Are we just going to read them and then move on to the next chapter? Or is there something we're supposed to do with these topics? Are they just, something that we can learn once, and then if we kind of know it, it's good enough? Or is it something different than that? So here in the Lam Rim Chemo, it gets into the actual way to sustain, to keep this familiarization going. So this isn't something we want to learn. And like many things in school we learned, we just forgot about, don't remember it all. I mean, don't even have a vague memory of many things that I learned in school and even passed tests about, right? So I have no memory whatsoever of so many facts that I learned before. And these facts that we're learning aren't facts that we can forget. These are facts that we have to know as well as we know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. We have to know the facts just as well as we know the alphabet in our mind, right? It has to be something that's not moving, that we're not going to forget. It's concrete, and that's in there. So how do we sustain that? How do we keep that in there? Because they aren't just general facts. They're kind of attitude facts. They're facts of our attitude. So these are very easy, right? Think about all the different attitudes you have during the day and how you feel about things in your life. Oh, I really like this. I really like that. I really dislike this. I'm really into that now, and I don't like that anymore. I'm bored with that. Just think about how things you thought were very concrete were not, and it became so easy for them to just fly away. Who knows where they went, right? They're in there somewhere hanging around, but they just kind of flew away. These things you thought were so important, things you thought that you needed to know, these little facts that you went and delved into and learned things all about, and then, it's funny. I was trying to, we have a bicycle. When I was a little kid, I was like wicked into BMX bikes, so into them. And I could take them apart. I could put a bicycle on a pile of pieces on the ground, and I thought I was going to be a professional BMX bike racer. I don't even, at some point, so I was super into it. I thought that was my path. I'm in 3rd or 4th grade. And I knew how to do all of this stuff. You know, I could take apart a bicycle. I could take your bike apart, a 10-speed, 12, any bike. So recently we decided, let's ride bikes again. Okay. So we have some bikes in the shed. I couldn't remember how to change the tire, how to get the tire off of it. How would I get the chain tight enough again? If the tire, like, and this is something that if my eyes closed, I could have put a blindfold on with pieces all over the room and put a bicycle back together. I mean, for years. I mean, this is what my little brain, my little Jeff brain dedicated my life to between, like, you know, learning the things in school and stuff. It was like BMX land, you know? And it was funny to see all these years later, I you know, couldn't put a bike tire, take a bike tire off. I was like terrified. Like, will I, am I going to do this wrong? Will I know how to do this right? And you know, this and the similar experience that I shared with all of you about recently when I was looking at the 8 verses for training the mind, prayer again by Geshe Langri Tamba, and thinking back to, you know, 20 years ago when I had this prayer memorized so clearly. And I was at the Tibet Center with Chungla Rinpoche there and Geshe Nikki there and, you know, Anthony there. And I was so proud of myself, not looking down at the book. And I thought that I was just this person who had this prayer in his heart. And then recently I started watching some teachings at the Tibet Center again, and they recite this prayer. I stopped reciting the prayer many, many, many years ago. But you would think if it meant so much to me, and it was my heart prayer, and it was something I memorized these 8 verses, and I knew so well that I was so proud of myself, you know, at the Tibet Center for being able to recite them. But when we went back to it, I didn't have them all memorized anymore. I was, you know, mixing them up, and I, you know, was trying to do it and realizing that I had a leaky pot. So I didn't sustain it. You know, there's something about our minds that it's not only about hearing it and not forgetting it. There's something about not forgetting it later too, right? That our mind has this ability, because we have so much coming into it. We have so much self-cherishing and we're chasing after so many things because it's all about me, I. Jeff, raise your hand. I'm Jeff. I was thinking about, if you ever want to, you know, find the I that you grasp at, have someone call your name in a room. You'll find it really quickly. You know, is Jeff Allen here? That's me. That's me. I'm Jeff Allen. I'm me. Were you gonna give me something? Or if I'm in trouble, I might not say it as loud. But if it's something that sounds like, oh, is Jeff Allen here? I'm Jeff Allen. But if, like, the principal, I remember when I was at Kyle, like over the monitor, Jeff Allen, please report to the principal's office. Suddenly I didn't want to be Jeff Allen. You want to find the self-cherishing and self-grasping attitude. Just hear your name called and then think about, why are they calling my name? Is it for something good or for something bad? If you need to find what you're trying to get rid of really quick, trying to find where your kind of obstacle is, you know, really quick, you'll find it real quick when your name is called and you think about, why are they calling my name? And you'll think that, you know, well, they love you. They're calling your name because you won. And then they're calling Billy's name that you just heard because he's the worst. And you think, oh, thank God, Billy's the worst. So it doesn't, when you look at the, you know, object of negation for meditation, you don't have to look very far. It's right here, grasping and misapprehending and being ignorant all day and looking around at things wrong. So why would we need to do this stuff? So that we can change the way that we think and sustain the changing of the way that we think. Keep it up. Keep thinking that way. I can't tell you how many times I've had such stable, solid practice. Day, getting up early in the morning, sitting and studying, doing my 6-session guru yoga. Then all of a sudden, it's impossible again. It's so hard to do. And then, you know, you can find yourself just allowing it to kind of just slowly be a little less, just be a little less. And it's so easy for that to happen. That's why every day we have to get up in the morning, think about impermanence. First thing we wake up, impermanence. but I have this precious human body right now. Right now, I have it. I have this path to liberation, this path to Buddhahood in my hands right now. That's where we start our day from. And we'll get into these meditations on the human life of leisure and endowment after this, probably a couple classes from now. Those aren't just made so I'm not a hell being, I'm not a hungry ghost. It's made so you have this intense gratitude for your opportunity every moment. You wake up with this intense gratitude. Oh, I'm not dead, but I could be any minute, but I have a chance right now. It's not to be dark. We don't meditate on permanence to be dark. It's so that we get our butt in gear. It's so that we do the things that will make us happy forever. Is that dark? I don't think so. I think that's the most light that there can be. There's nothing negative about knowing what's what, so that you stop not knowing what's what, so that you stop suffering, so you can have infinite happiness. I mean, it's so obvious. So what are these 6 preparations? So we learn about a topic such as relying on the teacher. We learn that the teacher is the source of all excellent qualities. We learn to look at all the excellent qualities of the teacher, try to not look at the faults of the teacher. We think about the 10 excellent qualities that the teacher can have. And we start to try to, get those points in our mind and know what they are without looking at a book, know what those 10 qualities of a teacher would be, and so forth. So how would we do a session? How would we start to look at the benefits of relying on a teacher, the downfalls of not relying on a teacher? Would we just willy-nilly it? How could we do it so we would stamp our mind with this information? So the texts say we would stamp our mind with this information by meditating on it, by familiarizing ourselves with it. So then Lama Tsongkhapas says, so then how do we start? What do we do when we're going to sit down and we're going to do a formal meditation session? Okay, so Lama Tsongkhapas says there are the 6 preparations. You'll find this in all the Lam Rim texts. So there's 3 phases of what you do during the actual meditation. It's 1, the preparation, the actual session, and then the conclusion. So the preparation, there are 6 aspects. First, you clean the place very well where you are. And whatever that means, in your mind, you clean the place. A lot of meditations begin with sweeping, the area. And we find the story of Chuddapantaka in the Lam Rim, who the Buddha saw was very, very dull-witted. He would try to memorize things, and there was some karmic obstacle that wasn't allowing him to. He'd try to look at a stanza, he'd memorize the first line, and he'd be like, I got it. And then he'd start to memorize the second line, and he'd forget the first line. And he was having a terrible, terrible time with this. So the Buddha said, well, you need to clean. He's trying to think, everyone thinks, oh, well, the Buddha just gave poor Chuddapantaka the cleaning job because he's so stupid. But the Buddha was being very skillful and realized Chuddapantaka had great merit within his continuum, but there were some obstacles to him being able to understand. So the Buddha said, go clean the monk's shoes. And when you clean the monk's shoes, just say each time, abandon dirt, abandon stains. Here, stains are delusion. Delusion is bad, right? So he had him, cleaning, the monk's shoes. And then the Buddha came to him and said, your job of cleaning the shoes is done. I want you to sweep now. So then Chuddapantaka, started sweeping. And the Buddha said, continue with this meditation. So, and this meditation builds up. So Chuddapantaka first says, abandon dirt, abandon stains. And then he's able to build on it. Here, stains are the afflictions of my mind. Afflictions are bad. Those realized don't want afflictions. So then he's sweeping and he starts to be able to think of more things. Attachment is bad. Hatred is bad. Ignorance is bad. Pride is bad. Here, so abandon dirt, abandon stains. Here, dirt is attachment. Here, dirt is hatred. Here, dirt is ignorance. Here, dirt is pride. So by doing this over and over and over again and seeing, doing this physical activity, Chuddapandaka started to purify his mind and was able to achieve the state of a foe destroyer by relying on the Buddha's advice. So why do we need to become a Buddha? Who would know that the person you thought was the most intellectually low was going to achieve arhatship in that life? If they couldn't even read 2 lines, memorize 2 lines of scripture. Well, the Buddha knew, and the Buddha knew exactly what to prescribe to Chuddapandaka. So we must become Buddhas in order to have that kind of skill to know, oh, Chuddapandaka, don't worry. Even though you can't memorize 2 lines, you're going to become an arhat. You'll never suffer again. Don't worry. You're going to have no ignorance, even though you seem like the most ignorant. And the Buddha knew how to make that happen for Chuddapandaka. Knew exactly what to give Chuddapandaka to remove that obstacle. So that's why we have to become Buddhas, because we see right in that story. So we clean the room, and then we arrange representations of Buddha's body, speech, and mind on an altar or on a table. So we clean the room and arrange images of enlightenment, it says. So we arrange those images. So that's the first thing. And then it says, number 2, make offerings, arrange them in a beautiful way and get them in the right way. Make sure that none of the offerings that you've gotten through lying or deceit, or just make sure that you've obtained all of the offerings that are being made in a virtuous fashion. Now, in some commentaries, it says, hey, if you did something non-virtuous and you have it, it's still better to offer it, right? Because then at least you're offering it. If you have something that, so there are commentaries that say that, but your main point to your offerings is that they should be obtained in a virtuous way. They shouldn't be, obtained in a wrong way. You can find a lot of commentaries on that. We won't get into that. Number 3, sit up on a comfortable seat and a suitable posture. So here in the commentaries, we get into the 7-point Vairochana posture. We've gone over that many times, and we go over it every teaching, so I won't do that to you right now. But we know what the 7-point Vairochana posture is now because we've practiced it. And it says in here, in a suitable position, your legs either full or half lotus, and absorb yourself in the practice of going for refuge and the spirit of enlightenment. So may I become a Buddha. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. May I attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Right? So that's the refuge prayer with bodhicitta. So we go for refuge. And it says that that we sit in this posture in order to keep our mind clear. So it talks about this posture and being very specific in order for our mind to be clear. And if it's not clear, a Sangha actually says in the Shravaka levels that we could even walk around a little bit. If we have this sleepiness or lethargy that we're just not able to break, we should walk around, maybe drink some tea, just make sure that our mind is clear. So we're going to sit down and we want to have a clear mind when we sit down. And so we go for refuge. Go for refuge, generate bodhicitta, the mind that wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So we've cleaned our place very well. We've arranged images of enlightenment. Then we've arranged offerings very beautifully. So we put them out and arrange them very beautifully. And then it also says when you make offerings, offer things that you like, offer things that you love, because you have that, you like it so much. So, you can connect to it, liking it in that way. So make an offering of things that you love, arrange them beautifully, and then sit up on a comfortable seat in a suitable posture, 7-point Vairochana posture, and clear your mind, and then go for refuge in the Mahayana way. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. May I attain a Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So you're going for refuge so you become a Buddha. Number 4. Now you imagine all the gurus, Buddhas, bodhisattvas, Prachika Buddhas, Shravakas, anyone who abides in the Buddha's world. So basically visualizing the merit field in front of you. So, you could envision, there's many different merit field visualizations, and I will say to you, you can study more about that. I won't give you a specific merit field visualization. There's the Guru Puja, the Guru lineage, the Lama Tsongkhapa merit field that you can find. You can find many refuge merit fields. You can imagine the Guru in the center, and then the profound view and extensive deeds lineage, left the extensive deeds lineage, right profound view, the lineage of blessings in the center, all going to the Guru or going to Shakyamuni with the various classes of Tantra and the hearers and solitary realizers, all of those beings. So, we could get into a specific teaching on a specific merit field visualization in the future, but now just imagine, in this part, you're imagining the merit field, all of the beings in front of you, in the space in front of you. And then so that's number 4. If I gave the numbers wrong, I apologize. Number 4. And then the 5th, we will make a 7-limb prayer. This is such an important prayer, such an important order of accumulating merit, purification, and increasing our merit. This prayer is found in all of the texts. You'll see that in the Sutra teachings. You'll find the 7-limb prayer in the Tantra teachings. Before you do any of the practices, even in the highest Yoga Tantra, you see a 7-limb prayer being offered, and you see all the different offerings and so forth being offered. So before we get too deep in the weeds with what it is, let's talk about the 7-limb prayer. So the 7 limbs are, first, prostration or homage; second, offering; third, confessing; fourth, rejoicing; fifth, requesting; sixth, begging or entreating; and number 7, dedication. We're imagining, as we're making this 7-limb prayer, everything that we just mentioned. So you have, you've cleaned the room, you've put the images of enlightenment, you've made the offerings, you've sat down, cleared your mind, you've imagined the merit field, and now you offer this 7-limb prayer. So the first of the 7 limbs is prostration or homage. So there is verbal homage, mental homage, and physical homage. Physical, verbal, and mental. We'll do it in that order. First, when we look at physical homage, that's making a physical prostration. That doesn't only mean, going all the way to the ground. Putting your hands together and bowing is a physical prostration. You're doing something with your body that pays homage. So this is the first category, physical prostration. When we look at the normal ways of explaining prostration, there's 2 kinds. Short prostration, where we would put our head, our hands, and our knees, the 5 points of our body on the ground, and then get up. It's hard to do if we're not in a, can't actually, show it. It's easier to do it when you can get up from where you're sitting and show how to do this. But it's the normal way you see, where someone's not laying all the way on the ground. I think everyone's seen prostrations. The semi-prostration is one where you're still on your knees and you're have your head and your hands and your knees on the ground. That's semi-prostration. Full prostration is where you put your entire body on the ground. So that's the full prostration. And it's said that the merit you create is related to the amount of atoms that you cover with your body on the ground. So the most logical thing to do if you're looking for merit, if you're in the, in your market for some merit, is to, make as full of a prostration as possible. So that's why you see people laying their entire bodies on the ground, because Vasubandhu said in the Treasury of Knowledge that you get as much merit as there are atoms that you cover, and the number of atoms that you cover will make you that many times a world king, as many of atoms as you cover with your body. So the more atoms you can cover, the more merit you create. So this limb acts against pride. So the reason we're doing this is to get rid of our pride. So you can see why laying your body on the ground out of homage would be, the most amount of atoms covered, a little bit less because it's not quite as hard and not quite as, damaging to our pride, if you will, being not as far, laying our body on the ground at someone's feet, doing a semi-prostration. And then we can do just the physical prostration. Again, you can only do what you can physically do. And if you're motivated, you can, though, visualize yourself doing a full prostration if you're only able to do this type of prostration. So we always have to work from the place that we're at right now and not try to be, oh, well, I can't get anywhere. I can't make a full prostration. I can't do this. I can't do that. That's not the way to think. Our mind is what we're maturing, and we're using these things as an aid. So when we make a physical prostration, if we are unable to do it the full way, we can imagine it that we're doing it the full way. So that's a physical prostration. The imagining part becomes mental as well. I understand that. But my point is that don't be distracted by little details. So of what you can do, or there's so many parts of the path that don't have anything to do with what our physical limitations are. It's just like there's, it's more self-cherishing if that's all we're focused on, right? We need to, we're either in cherishing ourselves, we're either the worst or we're the best. I love to point out we're the worst because no one thinks that's like self-centeredness. They think that's something else, but that's even sometimes it's a more form of self-centeredness and self-cherishing, because we can wallow in it so much longer. We're the best gets knocked off pretty quickly at times, because of our minds, but we're the worst we can really dwell in, or we can't do that. And why can they do that? And we can't do that. And if Chuddapantaka said, oh, I'm the stupidest, I give up, he wouldn't have become an arhat. So we have to work with where we are and do everything the best, most perfect way we can from where we are. And not skimp, not make excuses, but be honest and realistic. Okay, so verbal prostration. I pay homage to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So that's a verbal prostration. I make prostrations to Buddha, the conqueror, Buddha Shakyamuni. I pay homage. By saying that, that is a verbal prostration. So we see in the 35 Buddhas of Confession that we could just say one line in the 35 Buddhas of Confession and get rid of eons and eons of non-virtuous activity by paying homage verbally to Buddha Shakyamuni, to the founder, Bhagavan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly completed Buddha, glorious conqueror, Buddha Shakyamuni. I pay homage, I prostrate, I make prostrations. By saying that, eons and eons and eons of non-virtue is purified. So imagine if we can physically do that while we're saying it, physically make a prostration while we're saying to the teacher, the Bhagavan, the perfectly completed Buddha, Buddha, by saying to Buddha Shakyamuni, I pay homage. Now we're purifying non-virtues that we created through our body, non-virtues that we've created through our speech. And then if we're thinking about it, because we're creating, purifying non-virtues through our mind. So just by making a prostration, physically, verbally, and mentally, we can purify. So verbally is just saying, I pay homage, I make prostration to you, Buddha. So verbally saying that, and mentally is thinking, oh, I pay homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, imagining that we're, making prostrations. We're meditating and making prostrations, and we're just mentally saying, oh, I pay homage to this wonderful Buddha. So this is the way that we can do mental physical, mental, and verbal prostrations. And then when we do this, we should be thinking that we have multiple bodies. So that was just the basic. Now how do we do this actual practice? So we're making prostrations. When we're making prostrations, there's some advices around it, around the prostrations that we're making. Again, we're imagining that we're making them to imagine multiple, all the conquerors in all the 10 directions. Okay, so start there. So imagine that we're making these prostrations to all the conquerors, all the Buddhas, all the Bodhisattvas in the 10 directions. So what are the 10 directions? North, south, east, west, north, south, northeast, north, right, north. I have to see it. I'm not really good at this. North, south, east, and west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, up and down. Those are the 10 directions. So, north, south, east, and west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest, up and down. So all directions. So you're imagining the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are in all of those directions. So those are your objects of your homage, of your physical, verbal, and mental homage. So you can imagine now that because there's these Buddhas in 10 directions, right? You're going to need a lot of bodies to be right in front of them making prostrations physically. So we'll start with physically. You're going to need a lot of bodies. You're going to need, limitless amounts of bodies. Because there's, again, we're talking about this immeasurable number. So there's a number of Buddhas that our little minds can't imagine. So we've got to somehow come up with enough bodies that the number of enough bodies that our little minds can't imagine, so we can actually make a prostration to every holy being. Okay. So when we say we're doing limitless bodies, there's a limit to the number of Buddhas. There's actually a number of Buddhas that are Buddhas right now, but we say limitless, we say, a number we can't count because our minds can't imagine a number that high. So we have to then emanate that many bodies. So in our minds, when we're making a physical prostration and we're going down, we're imagining that we are doing it with that many bodies, like an immeasurable amount of bodies. We're imagining, as we're making a prostration, we're imagining that many bodies are simultaneously making a prostration. We're imagining we're emanating, because eventually when we become bodhisattvas, we'll be able to emanate bodies to go prostrate to all the Buddhas. So we're imagining that as we're making a prostration, we're like duplicating ourselves, duplicate. And now like there's immeasurable amount of Buddhas and holy beings, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Dakas and Dakinis, all these holy beings. There's immeasurable amounts of them in all 10 directions. And now we have immeasurable bodies paying physical homage to them. So we duplicate our bodies. So again, don't get stuck in just this. Try to abandon ordinary appearances, because you're going to have to be, there's Buddhas up, there's Buddhas down, there's Buddhas all different directions, right? They're everywhere. So you're going to have to be making prostrations like this, making prostrations like this, making prostrations like this, making prostrations like this. So just imagine that you duplicate yourself into this immeasurable number, and this immeasurable numbers of you are making these prostrations. So while you're doing this, you're thinking about the excellent qualities. So you're imagining them, all these Buddhas in all the directions, and you're imagining you're duplicating your body into the number of minute particles of the Buddha realms, it says. So you're making that many bodies, and so this is comes from this deep faith that you have. The power to do this is from this deep faith that you have. So you imagine that all of these bodies are emanating. So imagine if you get so much merit through making one prostration, right? Imagine if you're making an immeasurable amount to immeasurable beings, how much virtue you're creating. So the power of imagination allows us to get more virtue than we normally would. So it says, upon one particle, there are Buddhas as numerous as the particles of these worlds. All are seated in the midst of their children in the bodhisattvas. In this way, all are spheres of reality. I imagine conquerors filling all those particles. And then you imagine that you duplicate your bodies to be able to physically pay homage to all of those particles. I pay homage to all the conquerors with bowing bodies as numerous as the particles of those worlds, perceiving all the conquerors through the strength of prayers that aspire to the auspicious deeds. And this is from the prayer of Samantabhadra. Okay. So now, when we look at, so that was how we would do this physical. Now, if we're doing a verbal praise, we do this duplication as well. We have the same object of observation. All the Buddhas, as vast as and immeasurable as we can imagine, and that they're in all the 10 directions. Now we're going to imagine that immeasurable heads emanate from our immeasurable bodies, and immeasurable tongues are emanating, right? Because tongue is what we say things with. And that we're making inexhaustible praises of the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dakas, Dakinis, holy beings, etc. So we imagine that we're making all of these verbal homages of vocal obeisance to all of these Buddhas in all the 10 directions. So we imagine that, all of these, duplicated heads with mouths are making these homages, right? So we just imagine that we're duplicated into all of these beings. And that all these beings, we can imagine, are mentally paying obeisance. So we can imagine that our minds are thinking about these excellent qualities and thinking and paying homage as we're doing this through recollecting the Buddha's good qualities. So we're recollecting the excellent qualities, we're paying homage to them and praising all of the ones gone to bliss, and so forth. So we're mentally thinking of this over and over and over again, mentally thinking of the excellent qualities and so forth. And when we're physically making prostrations, we're imagining we have duplicated ourselves into infinity or into a number we can't imagine, an immeasurable number. And when we're making verbal offerings, obeisance, we're imagining that we're doing so with immeasurable amounts of heads and tongues making these verbal praises. So that is some of the instructions. You'll find an enormous amount of instruction more. Sometimes you will then imagine that all sentient beings are making the prostrations as well. One kind of a couple points that are made in the Lam Rim. When you make the prostration, when you go down to the floor, it's said that you should get up very quickly. You shouldn't stay down there for any period of time. There's some negative consequence that creates a laziness, or it's almost like, it's almost like a resting point. And you're doing this specific practice almost like with fluidity. Like you're making this prostration, you're bouncing right back up because there's a point to it that you're bowing to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas so that you can get out of samsara quickly. Bowing to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas so you can get out of samsara quickly. So when you see people sometimes jump up from a prostration, it's because they've read the Lam Rim and they see that you should get up very quickly, because there's two things you can imagine. One, I'm going for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood. Get up, getting out of Buddhahood for the sake of sentient beings. So people are getting up very quickly from a prostration because they're doing the refuge prayer. May I attain Buddhahood quickly. May I be liberated quickly for the sake of sentient beings. And many, many of the visualizations have you, when you get to the floor, imagine that you grabbed every sentient being's hand and pulled them up with you out of cyclic existence. You'll have to see if adding these things to your prostration will help you. But I find they really do. If you're making prostrations, you're imagining all these bodies, you're imagining other sentient beings are making them, and then you imagine you're grabbing all sentient beings' hands and yanking them out of samsara. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. You're yanking the hell hungry ghost, animal, humans, demigods, and gods out of their unfortunate circumstance that is completely full of misery and does not have the kind of happiness that we seek. So we can imagine that when we're making prostrations, and then we can make each prostration a Mahayana prostration, right? And we're doing it so we can become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. It's now a meditation that we're doing. We're going for refuge, and then we're pulling sentient beings out of cyclic existence. We're getting up as quickly as we can because we want to become a Buddha as quickly as we can. So we can make the most simple practices so rich and so detailed. And that's how we move forward. That's how we don't get bored. That's how we have these things change and affect our mind. If we know the nuances within the practice so that we can apply them, so that when we make a prostration, there's like a 5-second meditation that goes through refuge, bodhicitta, and working for other sentient beings all at the same time. This affection for sentient beings and being intent on their welfare, right? And wanting to become a Buddha for them is all happening. You know, wanting to fulfill my needs and others' needs by going for refuge, because we know that the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are the Buddha's the reliable guide that can bring us where? To Buddhahood for the sake of sentient beings. So one prostration becomes an entire meditation. You know, the texts say that the great geshes, the great tantric masters, can do an entire 6-session guru yoga between the time that they put their foot in a stirrup and they get their other one onto the other stirrup over the top of the horse. It says they can put their foot in a stirrup, and then, you know, I haven't ridden a lot of horses, but I know what you mean. You know, you put your foot up over the top of the horse and then click it in the other stirrup. A realized being can meditate on the whole path, do an entire 6-session guru yoga in the amount of time it takes to do that. And we don't have a lot of time. So if we could compact all of our time, compress our time, that's what Tantra does. It says, the heck with normal time, let's compress it. Let's abandon the ordinary appearances of normal time and let's compress it. Let's make time go faster. Let's make your time, not time, your time go faster. Very, very interesting. So all of these practices are so rich if you know the instructions in the oral tradition on how to practice them. And that's like 5% of what I've heard. If you keep studying, you keep going with these great lamas, you keep reading Lam Rim commentaries, you'll find so many golden ornaments to put on this very, very pure thing that will make it so much more attractive to you and so much easier to practice. We have the pure teaching. We haven't, Rinpoche, Khyentse Geshe Wanda didn't miss any points with us, but when there's someone like me that's not as sharp, I need all of those points reinforced and beautified. I need shiny objects to bring me over to them and to look at them, and another shiny object to look at this and be like, to really, really see the complete purity that I might have missed. So we must rely upon these teachings and rely upon more and more and more of them. I was looking at pictures this morning of Rinpoche. And I was looking at pictures, at the dates of pictures of Rinpoche. And I was looking, there's a picture of him from like end of January or something. We all know he passed in March 6th. He's sitting like with a stack of texts in his hand and he's studying. You know, this is a month and a half. And I look back on this time, he was physically having a very, very hard time. So think about when you're physically having a hard time, where your mind's at. When you think about the most intense pain and suffering you've been in, because that's what was described to me as what was going on with him. And then now read 300 pages. I mean, that's maybe the first thing we start with in the meditation once we get to it. The source of all my good is my kind Lama. If I could only be in so much turmoil and suffering and understand that the only thing that could help me was Dharma, and be unfazed by the physical suffering because I had it in my hand. I want to become that great being. That's what the meditations are for. It's not so that you deify your Lama. You deify your Lama because you want to become the deity. That's why. It's not because you and the Lama have a mental consciousness and an empty mental consciousness that are the same in terms of what the Lama started with and matured. Ours just isn't matured. The Lama's mind is matured. The Lama's mind's empty. The Lama's mind's nature is the same nature as our mind. But in terms of proliferation, in terms of maturity, the Lama has matured it. But the nature is the same exact nature of mind, same potential. So when we look at those 10 qualities of the Lama, those are the qualities we want. Why are we looking for a Lama with all 10? Because we want all 10. Someone can't give you what they don't have. Someone can't show you how to get somewhere they haven't gone. So you find someone who can show you as many as they can, you can find. Find someone who has as many to show you as you can find, something like that. I know that wasn't great English, but you know what I mean. You look for as many of those qualities and try to become the Lama. Not your mind isn't the same mind, right? You have separate consciousnesses, but the quality of the mind of the Buddha will be our mind quality. The Buddha's mind won't be better than ours. Eventually, our mind will be the same as the Buddha's mind. Omniscient, all loving, all powerful. Not omnipotent, can't change karma, but omniscient. So that is the first of the 7 limbs. Second of the 7 limbs is offering. So it says you can make, normal, mundane, and super mundane offerings. And then things that are owned and unowned, right? So you can make offerings of material things. So now we're actually sitting on a cushion. So you imagine that you're making offerings of all the material things that you can think of in the world, all these wonderful material things that you own. Now think of making offerings, such as your car, such as your house, offering your food, offering your drink, making offering of all delightful things, basically, all things that you enjoy, making offerings of all of these things. And then think about things that aren't owned that you can make offerings of, the mountains, right? The beautiful, the sun, the stars, a beautiful sunset, right? Offering the waves coming in and going out on the beach, that very wonderful feeling, right? That you have when you sit there and it's just a nice day, maybe 70s, and the waves are going back and forth, making an offering of that environment, unowned environment. And then imagining like the super mundane, the offerings that, bodhisattvas can make, emanating all of these different varieties of heaps of, incense and, piled up as high as a mountain and, things that would be impossible in our little kind of frame of reference to do. We can imagine, those kind of offerings, because eventually we'll be able to do those. And we can read about what those bodhisattvas can offer when we read texts like the Madhyamika Avatar, and we find out what goes on the bodhisattva levels and how good those beings are and what those beings, awesome beings, can do. We'll see that they can make so many special offerings that we can't even imagine. So that's the second limb. So we've made, we make these prostrations. And we have all 10 directions still. We're making these offerings in all 10 directions. So if we can heed the advice, right, of the last thing, what are we doing? We're multiplying, we're duplicating ourselves, making these offerings, right? Because that's what the bodhisattvas would do. So when we're making super mundane offerings, and we're even making mundane offerings, so we can imagine, because we're making them to this immeasurable number of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in 10 directions, we're going to need a lot of bodies and a lot of hands to hand them apples, to hand them, to offer them our house. Have this. We're going to need a lot of hands to go doing this, you know, 2 times immeasurable in order to go like this to each of those beings. So we can, when we're making offerings, we shouldn't just limit it to like, oh, here's a flower. We should imagine we're giving, you know, immeasurable amounts of flowers and immeasurable amounts of, things, you know, immeasurable amounts of drinking water, immeasurable amounts of bathing water, right? Immeasurable amounts of flowers, immeasurable amounts of incense, immeasurable amounts of lamps, immeasurable amounts of scented water, immeasurable amounts of food, immeasurable amounts of music, right? We're imagining that. So we're going to need a lot of hands, a lot of bodies. So we don't also have to try to make it so hard that it just doesn't seem real anymore to us too. We have to have feeling while we're doing this. And that's why in the Lam Rim, when it talks about, you know, doing the meditation on friends, enemies, and neutrals, and on all sentient beings are our mother, and then love and compassion, that we have to use real, actual beings, because it can start to become unreal for us and start to just become like something imaginative without feeling. So we have to make sure that as we're doing this, it isn't just something that's not genuine. You know, it has to be very, very genuine. And it'll become more and more genuine as we practice it. But we should really make sure that we are not just doing things for the sake of doing them. And we know why we're doing them, because we want to, there's, you know, a number of Buddhas I can't count, and man, they're so kind, you know, and Khenser Geshe Wandak is one of them. I don't know which one. So I better emanate enough bodies to make sure I get to him, you know, just being funny, but think of it in that way, right? So we don't want to miss any, we don't want to miss out. And the more Buddhas we connect with, the more Buddhas that will connect with us and show us what we need to do to become them, to become Buddhas. So we make these offerings in that way. And that is the limb of offering in a very, very small way. We could talk about the limb of prostration or offering for months, but let's just talk about them quickly. So the 7 limb prayer we actually find in the prayer of noble conduct. That this is where, and it's from the sutra that we find that in. We find it in the prayer book. You'll see that 7 limb prayer, which is an excerpt from that sutra, and so forth. So we have some experience with this. Right at the beginning, the aspiration prayer of noble conduct, part 1, the preliminary 7 limb prayer. So we find this in the sutra. So now we get to the next branch, which is confession. So this is very, very important. So we acknowledge our negativities of our body, speech, and mind that we've created in this life and since beginningless time. And in order for us to know what non-virtue is, we have to have studied it, understanding that there's non-virtues of the body, non-virtues of the speech, and non-virtues of the mind. 3 non-virtues of the body: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. 4 non-virtues of the speech: lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and gossip. And 3 non-virtues of the mind: covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong view. And then we have the other kind of ethics, if we've engaged in any ceremonies or taken bodhisattva vows, or if we have individual liberation vows. So we look at all of the different forms of behavior that we've engaged in. We look at the behavior of restraint that we've committed to, and if we've engaged in any negativity related to that. And then we acknowledge, in the presence of the Buddhas and bodhisattvas, as we in all 10 directions, we acknowledge to them that we have done negativities. So we say we've engaged in negativity through our body, speech, and mind. And we can be very, very specific about the things that we've done in this life, and the things that we really remember. And then we say the things that I've done that I don't remember in this life and since beginningless times. Since beginningless time, we've created non-virtue. And we haven't purified it because prove it, we're here. We're here and we're suffering. So there's some purifying to do. And even in this life, we forget about bad things that we've done. So it's important that we first start with the things closest to us that we have regret for and that we can remember we did. And then we move out to those things that we can't remember that we want as objects of purification. When we do confession, we say, I've done this through my body, I've done this through my speech, and done this through my mind. And how do we know what to confess? We look at the mirror of the Dharma. We look at what the Dharma says we should do and shouldn't do. If it says we shouldn't do it, and we believe an omniscient being said we shouldn't do it, then they know. So we should say we've done something that we shouldn't do. And then that kind of makes, and this isn't because they need to hear, there's some being out there that needs to hear our confession, has nothing to do with that, has nothing to do with guilt. It has nothing to do with walking down the street and, whipping yourself because you've been so bad and you want, some holy being to accept your forgiveness. No, it has nothing to do with that. You're not confessing so that, some holy being, forgives you. You're confessing so that you create new patterns in your mind by telling your mind that this type of pattern is bad. You're familiarizing your mind with telling it that this kind of pattern is bad. And you're doing it in front of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And in that way, you're asking for their help to change it. You've just told an omniscient being, I did these bad things and I know I shouldn't do them. I don't want to do them. So now that omniscient being has even more material because of the condition you just created with to help you with. If that makes sense. The Buddha is omniscient, but the Buddha still is not omnipotent. We have to request the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to help us. We have to continually say, I don't want to be separated from my Lama. Because if we create conditions with our mind to be separated, they can't make it so that we're not. The Buddha would just come free everyone tonight. The Buddha has love and compassion for all sentient beings. The Buddha would just wash it off, would wash us off. It's our responsibility to keep this connection, to tell our minds what to do. By confessing, we're telling our minds what to do, and we're telling beings that we want our minds to do this. Help us. Help us. Help our minds do this, not that. So that's why we're asking enlightened beings to bless us and be able to help us, because our mind's saying the only kinds of beings, now we're visualizing all these holy beings, the only kinds of beings who will know how to get rid of it is ones who have gotten rid of it. I'm telling you, I did this. You know how to get rid of it. So it's going for refuge in your mind towards getting rid of it when you're confessing. It's like you're taking refuge in getting rid of it. You're not asking someone for forgiveness so they'll be your friend, so that they'll then save you. No. You're asking the future Buddha you will become for forgiveness. I'm sorry I did these things that made me not become a Buddha. I'm sorry. I'm telling myself, I'm sorry I did this because it's actually hurting me so badly. I've done it again and I know better than this. If I'm telling myself this hurts me so badly and I shouldn't do this, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas don't do this. It's what Chuddapantaka did. Abandon dirt, abandon stains. Here stains are the defilements. The yogis and Bodhis and Bodhisattvas don't like defilements. I must get rid of them. I've done this terrible thing. I don't want to do it anymore. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, please pay attention to me. Please listen to me right now. I did this thing I don't want to do. Mind, I did this thing I don't want to do. Stop doing it. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, show me how to stop doing it. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are the ones who show me how to stop doing it. So it's constantly keeping this connection and keeping it for a purpose. So we're confessing these misdeeds that we've done in a full format. And then we move on to the next step, which is rejoicing. Now, we are now reinforcing our mind. Everything's about meditation. Familiarization is gom in Tibetan. We were just familiarizing our mind with non-virtue stinks. Non-virtue's bad, mind. I need help. Now we say, but I'm not all bad. My mind is not all bad. Now I rejoice in the good things that I've done. I rejoice in the fact I'm sitting here right now. I'm giving a teaching. I rejoice in the fact that I'm listening to a teaching. I rejoice in the fact that I'm doing this meditation. I rejoice in the fact the merit field's in front of me. I rejoice in the fact that yesterday I studied and the day before I studied. I rejoice in the fact that for 25 years I've had a contact with Khenser Geshe Wandak. I rejoice in the fact that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these holy things, rejoice in all of these goods that you've done that will be the cause for you to be free from all fears, be free from cyclic existence, and have immeasurable happiness. Rejoice in the fact that you've engaged in things that will allow for that to take place. And since beginningless time, you've engaged in good things. Also, we have some familiarity with good. And we know the good things make us feel better. It's one indicator that we have this mind that seems to be inclined for some reason in there somewhere towards goodness. And goodness makes happiness. There's some connection there that we start to be able to feel. We don't need a philosophical breakdown with divisions and definitions right now. We can just say we feel, right? We feel that. So we rejoice. Lama Tsongkhapas said, the best way to accumulate merit is by rejoicing. You just sit there and do it. Just sit and rejoice and rejoice and rejoice. And now you move on to all ordinary beings that aren't yourself, all the good they've been able to do. All the ordinary beings, and then think about ordinary beings who are practicing, who want to practice the Mahayana, ordinary beings who practice the Hinayana. Then you think of the good of all holy beings, all beings who've seen emptiness, all beings who, here, solitary realizers, bodhisattvas, Buddhas, all these holy beings, every bit of good they've ever done. Just think about that good. Rejoice in that. That tells your mind that's good. What they do is good. It's familiarizing your mind with goodness. It's reminding your mind that goodness is good. Right? You just told your mind that the stuff that I do that's bad, that causes me suffering, is bad. The stuff that I do that's good, that will cause me happiness, infinite happiness, freedom from suffering, is good. So it's making your mind more inclined towards the good, and it's setting examples in your mind of what would be the best. Rejoicing in what the best of the best do. I want to do what the best of the best do. It's so amazing they can do that. I can only do this. And now you're not only kind of becoming happy and rejoicing in good done, you're making a hero in a sense, like a real hero. Oh man, wow, what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can do. I rejoice in that. It's so great. They can help so many people. What did you just also reinforce? They can help so many people. Why am I rejoicing in that? When you're rejoicing, why are you rejoicing in a holy being? Why are you rejoicing in a bodhisattva? They can emanate all those bodies. They can help all those beings. Now you're rejoicing in that. What did you just do? You connected your mind to being able to do that and telling your mind that's what you want. You're starting to control your mind. You're telling your mind, this is what I want. It's not those things that I just told you about that were so bad that I do. That's not what I want. This is what I want. I want what those holy beings have. God, I'm so happy they do that. So wonderful. That's what rejoicing is. It's rejoicing in the good of all holy and ordinary beings. So powerful, Lama Tsongkhapa says. He says in the great treatise that this is such a powerful activity that takes very, very little effort and creates a vast amount of virtue. Okay, next, requesting the Dharma wheel to be turned. It's said that sometimes holy beings leave the world because they don't think there's anyone else to teach. No one else has asked them to teach. So there are circumstances where that has happened, and that's not something that we want to have happen. So we request these holy beings to continue teaching. We request the beings that are in our world right now teaching to continue to teach. And we do so because we know we need to continue to have teachings in order to move closer and closer to Buddhahood. Why was Khyentse Geshe Wandak a month and a half or two before he passed away in immense amount of pain and suffering reading a book? Because he was either needing to do so in order to become enlightened or showing us what we needed to do in order to become enlightened, right? So we have to continue to study, and we need a teacher. The source of all, foundation of all our good is our teacher. We need a teacher to learn. So now we're requesting the teacher to teach. Please teach. Please continue to teach. The teacher isn't supposed to give teachings unless requested. So it's part of the whole limb of creating connection between ourselves and the teacher, and creating this connection so that we can continue to be taught. So this limb is requesting, again, you can numerous amounts of bodies, right? Requesting all of these teachers and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to continue to teach the Dharma. We can always, make our meditations as big as we can, right? And then the next step is called begging or entreating. So now we're entreating, or we're begging these holy beings not to pass into nirvana. We're saying, please stay in this world. Please, all of you holy beings that are in this world, please stay in this world. Don't pass into nirvana. Do not be in an abiding nirvana. Stay here. Stay in the non-abiding nirvana form. Keep emanating. Keep staying with us. Stay here in this world. May your life be firm like a vajra. May you stay in this world. So we're asking the beings not to move into nirvana, not to stay in nirvana, to remain in this world and to teach us. So that's the sixth limb. And then the seventh limb is dedication. So this limb of dedication is dedicating any of the virtues we've created to becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. It says in the Lam Rim that there are three things that we can dedicate to. One is for the flourishing of the teachings in our mind streams and others' mind streams. One is to become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings, and another is to never be separated from our teacher, because we know that then the rest of it happens. That the foundation of all good is a teacher. So in the Lam Rim, it says that we can do those three different ways of dedicating, and we just and its focuses a little bit in this section of the meditation session on the foundation of all good being the teacher, and using that, dedicating to not being separated from that teacher, because we just went through that whole section, right? On the foundation of all good is that teacher, and that in all our lives we don't want to be separated. If every hour, if every minute we could just imagine our teacher on our crown or right in front of us in the front generation form, just abiding with us at all times, that would be the most incredible thing in the world. And we never want to forget that teacher is the source of our happiness. I never want to forget all of the holy teachers who've taught me, and all of the great teachers throughout my entire process. And even those teachers who I feel now maybe aren't the teachers that I find that I want to connect with. I must, no matter who those teachers were, see them as great holy gifts to me. It's so important. I see in a lot of people be around lamas, and then something happens, and then they lose faith, and they talk badly about them, and then they don't want to hear about them. And in the verses on Guru devotion in the commentaries, it says that if a teacher starts acting in a way that you don't find conforms with what's acceptable, back out slowly back out, and then just leave that teacher in your mind as the one who taught you this or taught you that, and be so grateful that is the foundation of all good qualities. That thing that you learned will make you become a Buddha. What they're doing is none of your business. It is when you're investigating them And hopefully you've examined them enough that you don't end up in a predicament where a teacher goes astray, goes awry, ends up strange. But if you do end up in that circumstances, and everyone's human, teachers make mistakes, you can see that teacher as the good teacher they were to you and slowly back out and say, I don't agree with that particular behavior. That doesn't concord with the Buddha, but these are the things that I'm focusing on. These are the good qualities of the teacher I'm focusing on, because this is going to help me become a Buddha, and put all that other stuff aside. Very, very important to just try and see the good and in all of the teachings that you've gotten that were correct, and see the good in the beings who gave you those teachings that were correct, and not leave your brains at the door. I'm just saying a smart person that reads the Lam Rim would not want to break any kind, create any kind of dangers around a teacher and break any relationship one has had with a teacher. And you can read more about that in the Lam Rim. But it's so, so, so important not to disparage the teacher and not to look at the teacher as something bad. And even somebody who's taught you one line, see them for that part. See that line that they taught you and how great and how wonderful it was that you were taught that line and no one else taught you that line. They were the ones who taught you that line. And just look at that part. You can back away from the rest of it. You don't have to stand next to that person, but remember that part. So, so important. And I think there's a lot of students that would benefit from this advice. And I've had to evolve from my side early on, teachers that I had that, before I really knew or whatever, that maybe to appearances weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I've had to reconcile my relationship in my mind with those teachers who I became angry with for acting in ways that were seemingly against the Dharma in what I could see. Appearances aren't always true, but we can only go by what we can see. And for what I could see, it seemed like things were going against what the Dharma was supposed to be. And I've had to reconcile that in my mind in order to go anywhere in Dharma practice. And as soon as I did, I feel there was a very, very clear thing that took place with my relationship with Khenser Geshe Wandak. When I was able to let go of some other things with other teachers that I had in my mind, not huge barriers I thought about day and night, but barriers if their name came up, I feel like my relationship with Rinpoche got so much cleaner by letting go of some of this other stuff. And we have to see the teacher in that way, and whatever they've taught us, see them for that teaching and how it helped, how it was able to benefit us. So we're dedicating our virtue to becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And then from there, it gets into the actual session itself. Hold on one second. Okay, so then the sixth preparation, very interesting. So we were in the fifth of the six preparations, and the fifth of the six preparations is making the 7 limb prayer. So in the 7 limb prayer, let's look at the 7 limb. Let me finish this up about the 7 limb prayer before we get into anything else. So let's go through it again really quickly. So number 1, we were going to clean the area we were about to meditate in. After we clean it, we were going to put images of enlightenment on an altar, images of Buddha's body, speech, and mind. That was number 1. Then we were going to obtain offerings without deceit, and we were going to put them beautifully all over the altar, number 2. Number 3, we were going to sit up in the 7-point Vairochana posture with our mind clear. Number 4, we were going to imagine the merit field. And then number 5, make a 7 limb prayer, making the 7 limbs of prostration, offering, confession, rejoicing, requesting, entreating, and then dedication. So we make this offering to the merit field of the 7 limbs with the details and points I just mentioned. And I encourage you to look for more. I encourage you. The 7 limb prayer is a holy, holy prayer that you find in the sutras and the tantras, and it's indispensable. So then, after we make this 7 limb prayer, which is number 5, there's a slight, not discrepancy, but you'll find 2 things made about 6. Sometimes number 6, sometimes, okay, so let's just go with the Lam Rim Chemo. So number 6 in the Lam Rim Chemo is making a mandala offering and making many supplications to this merit field. You know, may I understand guru devotion. May I understand leisure and opportunity. Through the force of this 7 limb prayer, may I, through the force of all of this practice, may I. So you're making many supplications. So you make a mandala offering and then make many, many, many supplications to this merit field. Now in liberation, it says you make the mandala offering during the 5th, during the 7 limb. And you could see that because it makes sense that during offering, when you look at the offering in Guru Puja, you'll see that the mandala offering goes in the offering section. So then another commentary I read said, make 2. Make a mandala offering during the offering section, and then make a mandala offering to the merit field and make supplications. So you'll have to become scholars and decide who you agree with based on intensive amounts of study and not being satisfied with partial instructions. Everything that's said, you know, there's always more ornaments to put on it and other kinds of oral instructions that are given that can help us make our minds better. Either way, you make this mandala offering and then make supplications to the merit field to try to generate this merit. You know, may I be able to realize these teachings so that now you're ready to sit down and realize them. You've made these supplications, you've asked the merit field for help, you've put in your mind these objects that are so holy, and now you sit down with the proper motivation, with all of these things having been done, and you start the actual meditation session on the topic, whatever that is going to be, and the order of topics. So if you're going to meditate on a meditation topic, it's topics. If you're going to meditate on a meditation topic, that's the topic. But if you're going to meditate on topics, you're going to need an order for the topics. It's not just a willy-nilly, think about this and think about that, and think about this and think about that. The stages of the path to enlightenment were put in a very specific way for a reason. And that's how we address them. So we'll talk about that next week. I see we are out of time. I can't believe we are out of time, but I'm sure you can believe we are out of time because you aren't jabbering away. But I just absolutely love talking about this. And I know that this is the information that can really make us happy in a true way, in a non-defiled way. Can make it so we don't have that fear that makes us go for refuge. We don't have to fear 6 realms of cyclic existence because we can be free from it. We don't have to think, oh man, I wish I could be happier, because we can have the most happiness you can have. We can cap it out. We can get to the highest amount of happiness possible. It's so wonderful that we have an opportunity like this to do so. So anybody have any questions before we do the concluding prayers? Thank you again, everyone. Really want to thank you so much. Let's see here. Okay, the 8 verses on training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. And again, anytime that you can imagine when we're doing prayers, all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas being so pleased, all around, and all sentient beings reciting the prayers all around with you, that you're leading them in, the better. Geshe Dorje Damdu starts every one of his classes with the same thing about now visualize the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, visualize all sentient beings with your parents to your right and your left, and then all of the sentient beings around you, and you're leading them in this prayer. So anytime that you can do prayers and with the motivation to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the space around you, and all sentient beings being led in prayer around you, you're only going to create more virtue and make yourself a Buddha quicker. So the more you can do within your practice, the more fruit it will produce. 8 verses on training the mind by Geshe Langri Tamba. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all and respectfully hold others to be supreme from the very depths of my heart. In all actions, I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others out of jealousy treat me badly with abuse, slander, and the like, I will learn to take all loss and offer victory to them. When the one whom I benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectively take upon myself all the harm and suffering of my mothers. I will learn to keep all those practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena as like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Osandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. That dedication prayer is from the prayer of noble conduct as well. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. May we never be separated in any of our lives from Khensur Geshe Wandak. May we meet with him or her in whatever body he or she comes in, whether it's the emanation body in our world, or it's the enjoyment body in the pure land that we meet with because we've seen emptiness. May we always, always meet with that holy, holy being until we are as holy as that being and can help that holy being free all sentient beings from suffering. May we create the merit necessary in order to reach Buddhahood and always be with Khensur Geshe Wandak. Thank you so much, everyone. Hopefully we can sustain this thought throughout our week. That's the whole point of this practice. How do we sustain this? And then it says, how do we sustain it, when we're sitting down? What do we do when we're sitting on the cushion? What do we do when we get up from the cushion? It's the same thing we're trying to sustain. These thoughts that we're trying to saturate our mind with are the thoughts that we're sustaining when we get up from the cushion. And the only way we can sustain them is by repeated familiarization. So let's make this a good week. Let's be better people. Let's make everyone around us happier that they've met us. Thank you.